remind us all that Christmas Day is actually the beginning of Christmas tide. The 12 days of Christmas begin on Christmas Day. Is that right?
That's right. The 12 days of Christmas run from December 25th till January 5th. There's a famous Shakespeare play called Twelfth Night.
Twelfth Night.
That occurs on January 5th, celebrating the 12th night of Christmas. So some people get that confused, but yeah, December 25th begins, does not end, the Christmas season.
Well, and this is a huge, actually, it's so great that you brought up Shakespeare because, people know Twelfth Night, but it's like we have this sort of, it's almost like the detritus of Christmas traditions and culture all around us. And people know the song, The 12 Days of Christmas. People know about Twelfth Night. My kids love the Chipmunk version of the 12 Days of Christmas. But it's like we don't know how to put it all together because, and Catholics, okay, Advent, and we have the four candles, and that's the season, and then Christmas starts. But it's like we kind of seem to have forgotten that it actually does all fit together, that these are not just, random pieces of traditions that have carried on. And at one point, it was very common for Christians to, in fact, celebrate all of these things in concert, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the modern day Christian living in a postmodern context says Christmas is about Jesus Christ. It's all about Jesus. Jesus is the reason for the season. And then there can be amongst certain groups a rejection of everything that is not obviously connected to Jesus Christ. And as you just said, there's this giant puzzle. There's this matrix that's built around Christmas with Advent and the 12 days and Epiphany, and that's been broken apart. And so these pieces are kind of lying on the table. And what we want to do today, especially with St. Nicholas, is show that there is a cohesive, not only preparation with Advent, but a season of Christmas, and that the traditions, and especially the tradition of St. Nicholas, known in our culture as Santa Claus, is deeply rooted in Jesus Christ, who is the reason for the season. And I think those of us with kids and families and everyone who's a Christian can better incorporate and see how all of this used to fit together without all of the commercialism and secular appropriation. So it's not about giving it up, it's about taking it back and finding out, for example, St. Nicholas is perhaps one of maybe top 10 most heroic Christians in the last 2,000 years, but people don't know about him. They don't know that he delivered young women from sex trafficking, that he is the patron of sailors and mariners, that he gave gifts to children, that he was imprisoned during the Roman persecution and was rotting in a jail cell, that he was part of the renovation of the Roman Empire under Constantine, that he was a fighter against heretics. So many great, true historical stories about St. Nicholas are lost and sort of reduced towards commercialism, which is all about buying stuff at the mall and giving it to other people. And there's a root of truth in St. Nicholas as a gift giver. But I hope today that we can show that Jesus is the reason for the season, and St. Nicholas is one of the greatest Christians, greatest bishops in the history of the church, pointing people to Jesus Christ, and that's why he's situated around Christmas.
And let's address that one right on then. So the main tradition, even beyond nativity scenes and the 12 days and Advent and all the rest, the main thing that everyone around the world associates with Christmas is the tradition of gift giving. This is the one central thing that is held true for the entirety of the history of Christmas. So here's a question that I have, because every year when this happens, and you and I did that fantastic and award-winning documentary episode about the true history of Halloween, where we debunked the idea that Halloween was pagan in its basis. Well, people will tell me as well. They say, oh, this is Saturnalia, this is a Roman feast, a pagan feast that the Christians came along and co-opted, and that's really all it goes back to, and it was tied to the winter solstice and things like that. So let me ask you that question. Is this tradition of gift-giving Christian or pagan?
Well, the tradition of gift giving at Christmas is not originally tied to St. Nicholas, who also was a gift giver, and we'll talk about that today. The tradition of gift giving is seen in the canonical Gospels, right? When you read the nativity story in the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke, but in Matthew, the wise men, the magi, come from the east. They're following the star, and they bring gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and they present them to Jesus Christ literally as birthday gifts. And so the notion of gift giving actually went from the first day of Christmas, as we discussed earlier, December 25th, all the way to January 6th, which in historic Christianity was called the Feast of the Epiphany, or the manifestation to the three kings, the Magi. And gift giving was done all 12 days. It wasn't just on December 25th, in honor of the birth of Christ and the coming of the wise men. So the gift giving is actually in the Bible. It's not pagan. It's right there on the pages. And then when we turn to Nicholas, we really get into a gritty story. And this is the story that I retell in my book, Nikolaus. It's the origin story. People like origin stories of like Marvel movies. This is the origin story of Nikolaus. And as people might rightly know, if you've seen like Gladiator 2 or any recent films about the Roman Empire, human sex trafficking was a big deal. Still is today, but back then especially was. And for poorer families that could not afford to place their daughters in society, provide dowries, etc., these young women, it wasn't just like go be a barista or go to get a BA in journalism. These young women often were turned out into the streets, were sold sometimes by their family. And in the original story of Nikolaus, he, as a young pastor, is aware of girls from poor families having to go into this horrible lifestyle. And so he identifies a certain family, and he sneaks into their house. It doesn't mention the chimney. He doesn't come down the chimney, but he does sneak in the house, and he leaves a certain amount of money as the oldest daughter is coming of age, which provides their family to place their daughter in society and for her to get married. And the man who's poor has 3 daughters, and Nicholas sneaks into the house and is leaving this gift of money to prevent these girls to being sold into sex trafficking, prostitution. And on the 3rd daughter, the dad stays up and he catches Nicholas in the house because he's curious on who's doing this. And it reveals to the father and to all of history that the anonymous sacrificial giving to preserve chastity and to promote matrimony is this humble pastor, this bishop named Nicholas of Myra. And he has great concern. He himself came from a very wealthy family, so he was a man of means. And he chose to become poor, celibate, chaste, and to give away his fortune rescuing young girls in this case. And from this story comes the idea, you have the 3 wise men bringing gifts to Jesus, but then this idea that this generous Christian pastor is sneaking into the homes to benefit children. And that's the origin story that gets developed over time. He becomes the patron of children. He becomes the patron of gift giving. And he died. This is also very important. He died on December 6th in the year, what was that? 343 AD. And in the Catholic Church, often when a saint dies, they're given a saint's day on the calendar of usually the day of their death. And so because he died on December 6th, the Feast of St. Nicholas is December 6th, which is at the beginning of December. And so over time, the church and Christians began to associate the Feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th as at the beginning of the preparation of Advent, preparing for Christmas, and also reminded the church and the faithful that Nicholas is a gift giver, the wise men are gift givers, and they kind of create the bookends. December 6th, St. Nicholas, January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, the Feast of the Wise Men, and between those 30 days is a period of gift giving, self-sacrificial giving. So you can see there's deeply Christian roots to St. Nicholas and to this whole phenomenon of this time of year being gift giving.